So if you go through the threadcast, about 15 minutes ago, I posted a few things that I was going to update you guys on. So if you want to follow along, you can scroll down the threadcast and find those things. So the first one is it's a screenshot that says open source Hive technology. And you'll see a few things listed there. Those are a few of the things I've been talking about the past couple of weeks. The shift in Inleo's approach to our proposal, I think is the main reason that we're funded right now. And that is a shift towards open sourcing more of our technology. And I think there's a bigger piece to that than just simply open sourcing our technology. We're also opening up APIs and access points for all Hive interfaces and applications. So, excuse me, as opposed to, just building open source technology that, is basically just used by our application, because I think that tends to be the case with a lot of open source tech. You build it open source, and obviously every UI is built in, or most UIs are built in different frameworks. And a lot of that technology can't be utilized across UIs. So, it's one thing to build things open source, but I think it's a whole other thing to actually build final products as APIs that can be utilized by other applications. Because a lot of times just the raw code base, while it can, help another project in terms of, figuring out how they can build it for themselves, or being able to fork the code and obviously adapt it to what they need. There are so many nuances to the way that different applications are built, the way that different platforms are built. And one way around those nuances is to actually build APIs that can be final products, where, instead of a UI having to go to our code base and, either fork it or just look at it to guide their development because it's written in a completely different language, they can actually just take an API endpoint, build a UI around it inside of their UI, and then use the API, endpoint in order to drive the actual, technology and actually utilize it. So it allows interfaces to quickly and seamlessly, and I like to call it plug and play, with a lot of the technologies that we've built. So my goal with many of these things, pretty much all of them, is that we not only open source the raw code base itself, but that we actually accompany that with an API that is an endpoint that can easily be utilized by any Hive application out there. And I think that adds a lot more value to this ecosystem than just simply open sourcing our code base, because we're we're primarily written in Rust, and most other Hive UIs, I'm not sure if any other Hive UIs are built in the same framework that we are. So, even if we open source the entire Inleo, ecosystem of front end and back end repositories, I don't think that would actually have much of a material impact for other Hive applications. I think a much bigger impact would be, yes, open source some of those code bases, because, I think that that's just a valuable thing to do, in the long run, but mostly in terms of the APIs, where we are building and maintaining technology, and that technology is plug and play for other applications via those APIs. So I actually think that the world is headed in a very API intensive direction. We're already kind of there, but it's just getting more and more, it's proliferating more and more in terms of, the majority of applications out there are all running various API frameworks. And, a lot of the biggest builders in various spaces, not just crypto, are actually API providers. So I think a big direction for Inleo going forward is actually to just be an API provider on Hive. We continue to innovate our platform and build our platform, but instead of just doing those technologies for Inleo only, we accompany all of our innovation with APIs that can allow other interfaces to integrate the same technologies that we're innovating. So, things like threads with the microblogging, things like shorts with the short form videos, things like creator subscriptions, etc. So a lot of these features that we've built that other interfaces and applications come to me and ask, how they can build the same thing. I think open sourcing the code base wouldn't actually allow them to necessarily just say, okay, we can just fork this and put it into our code, because everyone's written in different frameworks. But if we built APIs for them and made them plug and play, now you have a finalized product that can be utilized by all these other applications on Hive. So, not only are we building this user-facing technology with Inleo.io, but we're actually accompanying it with the APIs that are kind of more B2B for other applications on Hive. So instead of going out and selling access to those APIs, which we could do, I wanted to wrap them in with our proposal. So as long as our proposal is funded, I think Inleo should just continue to provide these APIs, as open source and openly available plug and play APIs for any Hive UI out there. So these things are now, we're actually rolling them out already. So a few things are already live, and like I said, if you want to follow along, I've got some of these things posted earlier in the threadcast. But already live are the Keystore Hive accounts, and that is both the open source code base and the API for them as well. The X and Google Lite accounts are also live. Again, both the APIs and the open source code base. And then the dynamic resource credit delegation system and the account creation tokens are also live as an API. So that API is live. The code base for that is not yet live. We're refining that a little bit, and then we'll release that open source as well as part of this proposal. But the APIs are already live for that. So actually, if a application on Hive taps into our onboarding framework, they can add Keystore Lite account or Keystore Hive accounts, X and Google Lite accounts, and also the dynamic RC delegation system and the account creation tokens in terms of our resources, all are wrapped into that one API. So when a Hive application adds that, they actually get access to all those things simultaneously.